Holy cow, can't believe another week has gone by. It is Friday, kiddos, so let's do our pledge and motto really quickly and see what we think happened to the will and that crazy ant. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job, and we'll do the Peter J. Shields motto really quickly. Here we go. We are students at Peter J. Shields. We believe in kindness. We are responsible. We are persistent. We are respectful. We are bucket fillers. We drop acts of kindness into everything we do. We are Peter J. Shields. And again, if you're not Peter J. Shields, you can substitute your school name or just join with us anyway and be a bucket filler. Anyway, the important thing to my little kiddos who are watching, whether you're Shields kiddos or not, I thank you for coming. 4 paragraphs left in this chapter. Oh my gosh. But no will. This is where I'm going to repeat this paragraph. Miss Honey, then surely the house goes to you automatically. You are the next of kin. I know I am, Miss Honey said. But my aunt produced a piece of paper supposedly written by my father saying that he leaves the house to his sister-in-law in return for her kindness in looking after me. I'm certain it's a forgery, but no one can prove it. Couldn't you try, Matilda said. Couldn't you hire a good lawyer and make a fight of it? I don't have the money to do that, Matilda. And you must remember that this aunt of mine is a much respected figure in our community. She has a lot of influence. Well, who is she? Matilda asked. Miss Honey hesitated a moment, and then she softly said, Miss Trunchbull. Chapter 18, the names. Holy cow, Miss Trunchbull. Miss Trunchbull, cried Matilda, jumping jumping into the air. You mean she's your aunt? She brought you up? Yes, Matilda said. No wonder you're terrified, Matilda cried. The other day we saw her grab a girl by the pigtails and throw her over the playground fence. Oh, you haven't seen anything, Miss Honey said. After my father died, when I was 5 1/2, she used to make me bathe myself all alone. And if she came up and thought I wasn't washed properly, she would push my head under the water and hold it there. Don't get me started on what she used to do. That will not help us at all. No, Matilda said, it won't. We came here, Miss Honey, to talk about you, and I've been talking about nothing but myself the whole time. Oh, I feel like such a fool. I am much more interested in how things and just how much you can do with those amazing eyes of yours. I can move things, Matilda said. I know I can. I can just push things over. How would you like it, Miss Honey said, if we made some very cautious experiments to see what you can move and push? Quite surprisingly, Matilda said, well, if you don't mind, Miss Honey, I think I'd rather not. I want to go home now and think about all the things I've heard this afternoon. Miss Honey stood up at once. Of course, she said. I have kept you here far too long. Your mother will be starting to worry. Oh, no, she never does that, Matilda said, smiling. But I would like to go home now, please, if you don't mind. Well, come along, then. Miss Honey said, I'm sorry I gave you such a rotten tea. Oh, you didn't at all, Matilda said. I loved it. The two of them walked all the way to Matilda's house in complete silence. Miss Honey sensed that Matilda wanted it that way. The child seemed so lost in thought that she hardly looked where she was walking. And when they reached the gate of Matilda's home, Miss Honey said, You'd better forget everything I told you this afternoon. I can't promise to do that, Matilda said, but I will promise not to talk to anyone about it, not even you. I think it would be wise, Miss Honey said. I won't promise to stop thinking about it, though, Miss Honey, Matilda said. I've been thinking about it all the way back from your cottage, and I believe I've got just a tiny bit of an idea. You mustn't, Miss Honey said. Please forget it. I would like to ask you 3 last things before I stop talking about it, Matilda said. Please, will you answer them, Miss Honey? Miss Honey smiled. It was extraordinary, she told herself, how this little snippet of a girl seemed to suddenly be taking charge of her problems, and with such authority, too. Well, she said, that depends on what the questions are. Well, the first one is this, Matilda said. What did the Trunchbull call your father when she saw him around the house at home? Oh, I'm sure she called him Magnus, Miss Honey said. That was his first name. And what did your father call Miss Trunchbull? Her name is Agatha, Miss Honey said. That's what he would have called her. All right, lastly, Matilda asked, what did your father and Miss Trunchbull call you around the house? Oh, they called me Jenny, Miss Honey said. Matilda pondered these answers very carefully. Let me make sure I've got them right, she said. In the house, at your home, your father was Magnus, Miss Trunchbull was Agatha, and you were Jenny. Am I right? That is correct, Miss Honey said. Thank you, Matilda said. And now I won't mention the subject anymore. Miss Honey wondered what on earth she was going through the mind of this child. Don't do anything silly, she said. Matilda laughed and turned away and ran up the path to her front door, calling out as she went, "Goodbye, Miss Honey. Thank you so much for the tea." Chapter 19. So these last few chapters are going to go boom, 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 boom. Matilda found the house empty as usual. Her father was not yet back from work. Her mother was not yet back from bingo, and her brother might be anywhere. She went straight to the living room and opened the drawer of the sideboard where she knew her father kept a box of cigars. She took one out and carried it up to her bedroom and shut herself in. Now for the practice, she told herself. It's going to be tough, but I'm determined to do it. Her plan for helping Miss Honey was beginning to form beautifully in her mind. She had it now in almost every detail, but in the end, it all depended upon her being able to do one very special thing with her eye power. She knew she wouldn't manage it right away, but she felt fairly confident. With a great deal of practice and effort, she would succeed in the end. The cigar was essential. It was perhaps a bit thicker than she would have liked, but it was about the right weight. It would be fine for practicing with. There was a small dressing table in Matilda's bedroom with a hairbrush and a comb on it and 2 library books. She cleared these things to one side and laid the cigar down in the middle of the dressing table. Then she walked away and sat on the end of her bed. She was now about 10 feet from the cigar. She settled herself and began to concentrate, and very quickly, this time, she felt the electricity beginning to flow inside her head, gathering itself from behind her eyes, and the eyes became hot and millions of tiny invisible hands began pushing out like sparks towards the cigar. "Move," she whispered. In her intense surprise, almost at once, the cigar with its little red and gold wrapping wriggled around a little bit across the top of the dressing table and fell into the carpet. Matilda had enjoyed that. It was lovely doing it. It had felt as though the sparks were going around and round inside of her head and flashing out her eyes. It had given her a sense of power that was almost ethereal. And how quick it had been this time. How simple. She crossed the bedroom and picked up the cigar and put it back on the table. Now for the difficult one, she thought. But if I have the power to push, then surely I also have the power to lift. It is vital I learn how to lift it. I must learn how to lift it right up into the air and keep it there. It's not a very heavy thing, a cigar. She sat on the end of the bed and started again. It was easy now to summon up the power behind her eyes. It was like pushing a trigger in her brain. "Lift," she whispered. "Lift, lift." At first, the cigar started to roll away, but then with Matilda concentrating fiercely, one end of it slowly lifted up about an inch off the table. With colossal effort, she managed to hold it there for about 10 seconds, then it fell back down again. "Whew," she gasped. "I'm getting it. I'm starting to do it." For the next hour, Matilda kept practicing, and in the end, she had managed, by the sheer power of her eyes, to lift the whole cigar clear off the table, about 6 inches into the air, and hold it there for about a minute. Then suddenly, she was so exhausted, she fell back into the bed and went to sleep. That is how her mother found her later that evening. "What's the matter with you?" the mother said, waking her up. "Are you ill?" "Oh, gosh," Matilda said, looking around. "No, I'm all right. I was a bit tired, that's all." From then on, every day after school, Matilda shut herself in her room and practiced with the cigar, and soon it all began to come together in the most wonderful way. 6 days later, by the following Wednesday evening, she was not able to only lift the cigar up in the air, but also move it around exactly as she wished. It was beautiful. "I can do it," she cried. "I can really do it. I can pick up that cigar just with my eye power and push it and pull it any way I want." All she had to do now was put her great plan into action. Chapter 20, the third miracle. The next day was Thursday, and that, as the whole of Miss Henny's class knew, was the day on which the head mistress would take charge of the first lesson after lunch. In the morning, Miss Henny said to them, "One or two of you did not particularly enjoy the last occasion with the head mistress took the class, so let us all try to be especially careful and clever today. How are your ears, Eric, after your last encounter with Miss Trunchbull?" "She stretched them," Eric said. "My mother says she's positive they are bigger than they were." "And Rupert," Miss Honey said, "I am glad to see that you didn't lose any of your hair after last Thursday." "Oh, my head was jolly sore afterwards," he said. "And you, Nigel," Miss Honey said, "do please try to not be a smart aleck with the headmistress today. You were really quite cheeky to her last week." "Oh, I just hate her," Nigel said. "Try not to make it so obvious," Miss Honey said. "It doesn't pay. She's a very strong woman. She has muscles like steel ropes." "Wish I was a grown-up," Nigel said. "I'd knock her flat." "I doubt you would," Miss Honey said. "No one has ever gotten the better of her yet." "What will she be testing us on this afternoon?" the small girl asked. Almost certainly the 3 times table, Miss Honey said. That's where you were all meant to have learnt this past week. Make sure you know it. Lunch came and went. After lunch, the class reassembled. Miss Honey stood at one side of the room. They all sat silent, apprehensive, waiting. And then, like some giant of doom, the enormous Trunchbull strode into the room. With her green breeches and cotton smock, she went straight to her jug of water and lifted it up by the handle and peered inside. I am glad to see, she said, that there are no slimy creatures in my drinking water this time. If there had been, then something exceptionally unpleasant would have happened to every single member in this class. And that includes you, Miss Honey. The class remained silent and very tense. They had learned a bit about this tigress by now, and nobody was going to take any chances. Very well, boomed the Trunchbull. Let us see how well you know your 3 times tables. Or to put it another way, let's see how badly Miss Honey has taught you the 3 times table. The Trunchbull was standing in front of the class, legs apart, hands on her hips, scowling at Miss Honey, who stood silently on one side. Matilda was sitting motionless at her desk in the second row and watching things very closely. You, the Trunchbull shouted, pointing a finger the size of a rolling pin at a boy called Wilford. Wilford was on the extreme right of the front row. Stand up, you, she shouted at him. Wilford stood up. Recite the 3 times table backwards, the Trunchbull words. Backwards, stammered Wilford. But I haven't learned it backwards. There you are, cried the Trunchbull. She's taught you nothing. Miss Honey, why haven't you taught them absolutely nothing all this last week? That's not true, Headmistress, Miss Honey said. They have all learnt their 3 times tables, but I see no point in teaching it to them backwards. There's little point in teaching anything backwards. The whole object of life, Headmistress, is to keep going forwards. I venture to ask whether you, for example, can spell a simple word like wrong backwards straight away. I very much doubt it. Don't you get impertinent with me, Miss Honey, the Trunchbull snapped. Then she turned back to the unfortunate Wilford. Very well, boys, she said. Answer me this. I have 7 apples, 7 oranges, and 7 bananas. How many pieces of fruit do I have altogether? Hurry up, get on with it, give me the answer. That's adding up, Wilford cried. That isn't 3 times tables. You blithering idiot, the Trunchbull shouted. You festering gumboil, you flea-bitten fungus. That is the 3 times tables. You have 3 separate lots of fruit, and each has 7 pieces. 3 7s are 21. Can't you see that, you stagnant cesspool? I'll give you one more chance. I'll give you 8 coconuts, 8 monkey nuts, and 8 nutty little idiots like you. How many nuts do I have altogether? Answer me quickly. Poor Wilford was properly flustered. Wait, he cried. Please wait. I've got to add up 8 coconuts, 8 monkey nuts. And he started counting with his fingers. You bursting blister, she yelled. You moth-eaten maggot. That is not adding up. This is multiplication. The answer is 3 8s. 3 8s. What is 8 3s? 3 8s. What is the difference between 3 8s and 8 3s? Tell me that, you mangled little wurzel. Look sharp about it. By now, poor Wilford was far too frightened and bewildered to even speak. In 2 strides, the Trunchbull was beside him, and by some amazing gymnastic trick, it may have been judo or karate, she flipped to the back of Wilford's legs with one of her feet, so the boy shot up off the ground and turned a somersault in the air. But halfway through the somersault, she got him by the ankle and held him dangling upside down like a plucked chicken in a shop window. 8 3s, the Trunchbull shouted, swinging Wilford from side to side by his ankles. 8 3s is the same as 3 8s. It's 24. Repeat that. At exactly that moment, Nigel at the other end of the room jumped off his feet, started pointing excitedly at the blackboard and screaming, The chalk! The chalk! Look at the chalk! It's moving on its own! So hysterical and shrill was Nigel's scream that everyone in the place, including the Trunchbull, looked up at the blackboard, and there, sure enough, a brand new piece of chalk was hovering near the gray-black writing surface of the blackboard. It's writing something, screamed Nigel. The chalk is writing something. And indeed, it was. Yee, Cliffhanger Friday. That worked out perfectly. I didn't even plan it that way. That's a great Cliffhanger Friday. Anyway, we got through this book quicker than I thought we might, so we might get a 3rd Roald Dahl book in there before the end of the school year. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Bye. Have a great weekend. Bye.